So welcome for this presentation where we're gonna talk during 45 minutes about PG, so Postgres, database, SQL, and how amazing this database engine is for you as a developer. It's the main thing for this presentation. But first, let's do a bit of history. Everything started in the middle of the 70s with Michael Stonebraker, a pretty famous lead on a project, a database project. It was in production, working fine with customers, and everything went well, but he thought it was the time to start something else. Something new and something different, and he decided to go back to school as a researcher to create something different than before. He worked with really good students to create this something, and this something is Postgres. At that time it was called Postgres. Postgres comes from post, something after, and ingress, the original database you worked on. And because at that time, you already know, it was a bit fancy to put your name inside it, we had Postgres 95. And the year after, because 96 was a new year, they decided to rebrand the tool to make it more SQL. It was something important at that time, so PostgreSQL became something, and they decided to do some kind of tabula rasa of the past with PostgreSQL v1. But in fact, they had 15 years of past and history in the version system, so the year after, they decided to rebrand it again with SQL still, but v6. And since that, it's quite smooth at the versioning system. We have one major version each year. A bit of introduction for myself. I'm Kevin, Google developer expert on cloud and Kotlin, so I build things and I deploy them in the cloud. I love the CI from GitLab. I'm open source contributor, and I'm available on multiple social media. I really recommend Mastodon. It's a good one, and it's using behind the scene Postgres. And I'm also working at Gradle, but not on the famous Gradle build tool, but on something else, because our leitmotiv internally is to make developer happier, which is really fun when you work inside that company, but we want to make every developer happier by pushing something which is called the developer productivity engineering. It's the science behind the developer experience. You know this kind of thing where it's painful for you to develop things and your tools are not good enough. We are working on that all day long. We wrote a white paper about it if you want to understand it more. And we develop, and I'm working on that part, Velocity, which is a tool to get all insights about your developer experience. From the build tooling you have, your test execution, what is slow, what is flaky, how to distribute tests or just run the tests you need to run, not the whole set just because you change one line in the documentation. We have all of that in one UI, and so we can see and we can measure and decide what we can improve. It's really good. And there is some cache just to improve also the behavior of your building logic. And this tool is based a lot on SQL. We use SQL everywhere, and PG especially. And the SQL stuff, in fact, it's a structured query language. It's a language a bit different than what we know and we had the habit to use, because it's a language based on a spec. There is multiple specs, you can download them, but when you use PG, SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, you use an implementation of this spec. So it's a bit different. The first spec has been released in 1986, so I'm quite proud to present something which is older than me in conferences. Usually we talk only about things almost released this year. Now it's more than 30 years ago. And the last one, the 9th version, has been released in 2023. So if you think, people think the system and the SQL hasn't evolved since 92, yeah, you missed some part, and there is a lot of evolution since the version of 92. And one recommendation when you work with SQL is to never forget about the order. SQL is a declarative language, so it means what you write is not executed in this exact order. There is multiple steps. The most important one is the from and join. It's the only one in charge of loading data from the file system. Everything else is just a data pipeline, a data transformation pipeline. You manage the data and you transform it to get the result you want, nothing else. And every time I work with SQL, I see people, and we have memes in the internet about that, about everything in caps lock. No, I feel offended, aggressed, assaulted by that every time I see this kind of thing. Please use lower cases. We have pretty good IDEs now to help for the auto-completion, coloration, and everything. So everything in this presentation will be done with this kind of syntax, lowercase everywhere. I really recommend that. And for a good SQL presentation, we need a good database as an example. There is a pretty common one called the Sakila database, which is used by multiple blogs and articles about SQL just to present things. And I will do the same. It's one coming from the MySQL world, but it has been translated in many languages, including PG. And it has been created in 2005, so it means it's attached to a business model, which is a DVD market franchise, so something dead since Netflix. But still, the model is still valid, and we have movies, we have actors, languages, staff, address, customers, markets, many things. And when we discuss about it, it's quite easy to discuss about the same model. So I really recommend you to download this model and see article using it. And the first thing I would like to introduce, it's something from PG, yes, but also at the SQL level, it's the commentable expression. It's something I will use a lot during this presentation. You all had to manage this kind of query. You know this query you read from the middle to the edges just to get a better understanding of what it's doing at the end. For me, it's the callback hell of the SQL world. We have a lot of complexity bundled into one query. It's like if I ask you, in this slide, can you say what is the signature of every method here? It's complicated. Even with the coloration, it's hard to read. It can be better if I do that. Just by refactoring it a bit, we see everything is integer. It's the same with commentable expression. The idea first is for us as humans to understand the system a bit better, to improve readability. I'm able to extract the subquery into a block at the top and just use it at the ending query. The ending query is still the same. It's the one which will provide the result you want, but something is extracted. And like in any language, as soon as you extract something, you have to name it. So this name is important. And here, it's the documentary runtime. It's the subquery. And here, I add some meaning to the query itself. And as a developer, I just need to read that part. And here, documentary runtails can be an official table or just the result of an intermediate table like the commentable expression. I don't care. I don't care if the name is correct enough. I won't dig into the implementation. It's like you don't read the substring implementation every time you use it. Here, it's the same. If you name it correctly, it will work fine for every developers. And again, because it's a declarative language, it's not because you write something, it will be done the same way. So if we have multiple commentable expressions, like here, first, second, and third, and they are all totally unrelated, there is no state shared between them, in fact, the system is able to optimize that and run them in parallel. And at the end, you get the result, of every CTE inside the ending block, so the system can be better. Here, PG is not the best, but it improves over time, and then by using that, you improve readability and performances too. So it's quite good. Another major changes is window function. I'll be able to just introduce 2 window functions, but let's see first how this thing has changed the SQL world. It's the first, and I think only time, we introduce something in this data pipeline. We have a new step introduced in 1999, if I remember correctly, so quite old now, more than 20 years, inside this data pipeline. And because it's executed before the select is the one just filtering every values you want, so it's just a map here, we can do a lot of things before the select. If I ask you, for example, in this database, I would like the number of movie per rating. The usual query to do that is a group by. But the group by has a pretty important flaw. It destructs data. In fact, we have the number of movies, 195, but we don't know what we have behind this number. It's just a number, and we can't do anything else after it. And it's why window functions, and especially the filter one, is quite useful if you want to do something like this. So with the filter, we can do almost the same. And here, if I want, something I forgot to mention in the previous slide, if I want the whole thing at the same time, sorry, I'll do a bit back. If I want the number of movie globally in the system, I can't get it with the group by because I have this group by clause and I can't use that at the same time. And with the filter one, it's possible. I can do a count star as all. It's the one you already know, nothing very specific here. I got the all. But I can do the count star filter, and here you can use a predicate. The predicate is the same one you used for years now after the from, but here it's just inside a filter condition in your select part. And here where rating equals PG equals hair equals whatever rating we have in the American system. And the result is here. We have everything, including the 195 movies rated R. It's a way to get those things. The result is a pivot of the other one, so it's just one row instead of being multiple columns, multiple lines, sorry. But we have everything in the same one. And it's from a database perspective and developer perspective, you only have to read one row, which is better than the previous one. But with group by, it was possible to do something like this for ratings, but imagine if I want to do that on duration. Duration, a movie longer than 3 hours is also a movie longer than 30 minutes. So it's really complicated to get into this situation where a movie can fall into multiple buckets. So here we can do the same thing with just the where predicate like we did before. Nothing different, the syntax you already know, and nothing really fancy. And we have the expected result with every movie being longer than 30 minutes and 39 only for 3 hours long. And we can merge them together, so there is no limit. I can do the where on rating, on duration at the same time and on multiple filters, or I can use multiple where things in parallel. No limitation again, it's just example here, I just merged those two together. And I can get everything in one round trip with the database. So again, less latencies, less computation done between your code and the database, everything done at the same place, and the database has access to the whole data set, so it's simpler for it to do that thing in one round trip. So again, better from a developer perspective. Another window function I love to use, but when I have to use it, it's mainly because I have data corrupted in my database, so it's quite funny to use, but yeah, in some specific cases. This one is row number. So let's see it in action. We'll do data corruption on purpose. I'll create a table here, film with duplicates, so you know what I will do. I will insert in that table the same list of things of film I have, the whole list, and then I will just select randomly 40 movies from this list and I will insert them again. Obviously, we have duplicated information in that table. If I do the count, I have 1,000 plus 40s, exactly what I expected here. And if I list them, I already see there is adaptation holes twice. But if we use the group by, it's usually the first thing we try. We will group by title, and we'll lose the ID thing. And usually, we want to keep the ID to do the deduplication, because it's the higher ID which is the one we want to delete. The higher one is the one inserted the last, so it's usually the duplicated one. So here it's really important, and the group by stuff is not possible or really complicated. So what we can do with row number. Row number by itself, like its name implies, it's very simple. It's a way to put a label on each line saying it's the first one, second, 2, 3, 4, 5, until the end. Without anything else, it's just that. You already have that in your IDE when you use it. But I can use the other clause and provide some parameters here, partition by title, and it will just reset the row number every time the title changes. So it means for the first one, okay, it's 1, so the label is 1. The second one is a new title. Okay, I got 1, 2, it's the same one. And after that, I have adaptation holes. The first time, it's 1. It's again a new title. But for the second adaptation holes, it's still the same title. So the label is 2. And I got something with 2 attached to that one. So it's good. It's what I wanted. I can put that in a commentable expression again. And this time, it's not a select, but a delete at the end. And I can just delete everything where this duplication times is higher than 1. So in this case, I will delete everything with 2 because we can only have 2 due to the insertion model I used. And with that, I deleted exactly the 40 elements I had before. So there is many other window functions. I just have time to introduce 2, but I really recommend you to read about it. There is dedicated books about window function, and it's amazing what we can do, and usually we can do things better with that instead of multiple queries. Window functions are really impressive for that. Another thing I would like to present is the join lateral. It's something as a developer, Java, Kotlin developer, I tend to use a lot now, but I discovered quite recently. If I ask you, I would like the 3 last runtails per movie. So for each movie, please provide me the last 3 runtails. What should I do? I just discovered row number, so we can potentially use it. I will do almost the same. So instead of just doing that on the movie list, I will do that on the runtail list. So I got every runtails loaded and then labeled with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until the end for each movie and reset it at the next movie for the next one. Good. I put that in a commentable expression and I keep only the first 3 for each. So the result is perfect. It's exactly what I wanted as a developer, product owner, whatever. But you see, the implementation is quite different. I asked for each movie, I want the last 3. For each. We don't have for each because SQL is a declarative language. But the for each is just something else. It's join lateral, in fact. So first, we need the thing we will for each on. And this thing is the movie list. So here, we select everything from film. OK, good. Then we do this left join lateral. And inside of it, it's a bit different subquery here. You have access to the line from the left table inside the subquery. So it means for every lines on the left, we have a different subquery on the right. And here I can filter only 3. So the other implementation, I loaded the whole database, labeled everything, and filter it after. Here I just load, using multiple subqueries, just load what I need. So it's pretty different. Maybe the first one or this one is more performant. It's up to you to define that based on your model, based on your indexes and things like that. But for me, it's more developer-friendly. It's the for each. The for each I won't like to use so much. So here I have it. So let's dig a bit into the database model now. And here in that slide, there is a spoil. I don't like serial for multiple reasons. Everywhere in the documentation, even in those slides, there is this thing, ID serial primary key. It's so simple to use, to write. It's perfect for demo. It's perfect for Hello World, but there is some limitations. At the insert level, it's quite fine. You just do an insert like this, insert it to film serial. I have multiple movies. First, don't forget this returning ID thing here. It's a way to do a select after an insert in the same query, so you don't have to do that at your application level. And the result of this insert is exactly that. So we don't care about movies here. We want to focus on the ID column. Here I have 1, 2, 3, 4. These 1, 2, 3, 4 elements, IDs here, are generated by a sequence created at the table level when the table has been created. There is this sequence, and this sequence is just a global value holding the value of the last one inserted into this table. And every time you insert something else, this value is requested to get the last one and incremented to get the next one for the future insert. So here, first, we have a global value. But PG can run in distributed mode with sharding, with cluster and replication, read-write, multiple replicas based on the distribution you use. So here we are talking about a global state we need to distribute. Yeah, as an engineer, I got shivers just by seeing that. It's for me a wrong pattern. And it's why I really recommend you to use UIDs. Here, this slide is about UUIDs, but there is many UIDs out there, and it's up to you to pick the right one. Let's start with just UUIDs. So if you use the official PG distribution, you should have access to UID or SSP. It's just an extension. You just have to enable it like this, create extension. And then you have access to new types. Here, UUID. And UID generated before, here it's the default value I want to set because I don't want to manage null values as IDs. The insert is exactly the same. There is no difference, not a byte. But the result is quite different. UIDs are pretty big, so you see there is something like that. So if you have some storage issue or you want to optimize for that, there is other type of UIDs you can select and use for PG. UID v4, that one is the most, the simplest one to select if you want to start with something. But here there is something you don't see because it's not here anymore. The sequence we have before is not here because PG is able to use the entropy source of your system to create UIDs. In fact, there is more UIDs possible than atom in the world. So the case where you have a collision is pretty rare, except if your entropy source or the source of randomness of your system is fucked up. It may happen if it's not well configured, but yeah, it's something you will avoid to have duplication. And then everything is generated automatically. But if you can ask the DB to generate that for you, why not just generate that on your at code level and just provide that for the insert? And so you don't have the returning thing because you don't care. You already know the ID before. It's something generated on the fly. No extra request, no big thing on the wire. It's faster. And from a security perspective, it's even better because you avoid, by using UIDs or something not sequential mainly, some kind of enumeration attack. Because if you can guess the ID of the next thing, potentially one can use that as an attack vector to try to bench your security system by trying to access something new. And it really depends on how your implementation is done at that level. So from a security perspective, it's better. Again, we dig a bit more into the database, and especially about constraints. Many people say, yeah, the application has to be perfect, and the database is just a way to store many things into it. And it's part of the hexagonal architecture. I like it, but I feel we should be better. Because for me, if my database is not protected against corruption, there is issue. And I don't want to use row number so much to avoid or clean up the database. So I would like it to be protected. So here I have some functional ID, which is called ISAN. It's the same as for book, you know, ISBN. Here it's the ISAN for movies. And it can be null, so I have a constraint I can create, null constraint here, or something like this. And please take a look, it's a real POSIX regex, so it's not using the percentage regex format. You can use that directly with this strange operator, tilde star, or just tilde based on case sensitiveness. But here you can use something to verify, okay, this field has this format and it's the right one, so you'll prevent data corruption. And because it's a functional ID, I have something to declare, okay, this one has to be unique. Good, we have our protection. Let's see it in action then. If I do something really silly, I insert something which is just a UID, the system will do something amazing from my point of view as a developer, as an operator, as a one in charge of debugging the system. I have an error with a message saying this one violates the constraint you defined, a valid a valid ISAN has to be provided. That is better than a database corrupted again. So I prefer to protect mine than, and especially when you have a corruption. The insertion went well, but it's when you read you have an issue. And it's hard to find when this value has been inserted. So please protect your database. And if you do the insertion twice, so here with a valid ISAN, the first time it works, the second time it doesn't work, and I have again a constraint violation, and I see, okay, the system is not able to do this insertion because it already exists. So again, better. I prefer an error over a database corruption. And if I have to do and use this ISAN stuff multiple times, okay, I can copy paste it the first time. So 2 tables to maintain with this ISAN regex. But the third time I would like to use something different or a bit better from a code perspective. And I can use types. In PG, you can create this kind of thing. Here, I have a type. So it's just the memory structure for the ISAN stuff. And because I'm lazy, I just marked block by their position, block 1 to 8. And I can create a domain, which is in fact just, to sum up, a type plus a validation at construction time. Okay, we have everything. Let's create our first ISAN. I have, with that, so parentheses, it's really different than the one we used to use and to see in the previous slide with ISAN dash something in the same string, but it's enough from the memory perspective, from the code perspective. I have everything to use ISAN in my system. If I provide something null, again, here I have an error. Again, data corruption, and things are done correctly. But if you want to be PG idiomatic, you can create some functions like that, ISAN to text, text to ISAN, ISAN equals, ISAN not equals, and use this kind of structure where you pass a parameter to a parameter function to another. No, no, don't do that. That is really bad because if you use that, you are doing types wrong. Types are associated to something very important in every languages you use. It's operators. And in fact, in PG, we can create our own operators again. So based on procedure or on functions, you have equals and not equals here, quite simple to read. And at the end, you have that. And from, again, as a dev, as an operator, as a DBA, when I see this kind of request, it's way better than the one we had before. It's almost the same, but still, I want to read something good enough because when I have to debug that, it's important. And just writing that is simpler enough. So really important, use that and leverage this feature. To be clear, it was the reason why PG has been created at the very beginning. It was the idea to introduce types into the database, Ingress at that time, and Michael Stonebraker got some awards about this thing for PG itself. So it's the core of PG and really important. Again, let's dig a bit lower in the stack. If I say to you, PG can do more than PG itself, it can be some kind of lightweight RabbitMQ-ish if you want to stream messages to other users. So as an example here, it's just a trigger where when I do an insert, I push something in a queue attached as a parameter of this trigger. Okay, good. Film.add, and I stream something. And this something is formatted as a JSON. With an example, it's better. I have an application connected to the database starting to listen on film.q. Nothing happens. It's just a new keyword, listen. Another application, not connected to that one, just do the inserts. Okay, got it. The other one, still connected, will receive push-based. It's not long pulling stuff or else. It's just pushed from the database to the application some data, so the result of the transformation, the trigger itself, so IDs and movie names here, streamed as JSON. It's a bit simpler, but I really recommend you to just stream IDs because this attribute in this stream thing is quite limited in length, so usually we just stream IDs. Here it's good for example, but here we have something purely reactive from the backend, the database, to the application, and then your application can do the same to your clients using server-sent events or WebSockets, as you want. Just one thing, it's very lightweight, so it's not a Kafka or another system with retention. If there is a disconnection in the process, the application on the left, you won't get the thing, messages are just lost. It's best effort all the time, but still can be useful if you want to synchronize multiple things. And another thing I like to use, and I used in prod for a lot, it's L3. And as an example, I want to mention, for me, the best action movie ever, Terminator 2. Thank you, James Cameron, on that. And especially this saga for me is important because now it's a saga which is not linear anymore. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. It was a thing. And then they decided to soft reboot after the first one, Genesis. So they just ripped off the 2. It was a big mistake. And then they did a soft reboot after the second one. Yeah, a bit better, but still not the best movie ever made. So as a question, I would like to watch the number 6. I don't say we need to watch everything before, but I would like to know, as a customer in this market franchise, okay, I want to watch 6. What is the movie I need to watch before it? There is something in PG. It's another extension again, L3. So I can enable it like I did for UID OSSP, L3, and I have a new type, the saga order, L3 here. Good. And now I can create a field. It's string representation, but it's converted automatically to an L3, where I can represent the path between the root of my tree and the current node I'm on. So here I choose the ID itself as a representation, but it could be anything you want. Here for 1, so it's just 1. It's the root and the node itself. But for 2, it's 1.2. For 3, 1.23. For 5, it's 1.5. For 6, it's 1.2.6. You got the ID. OK, cool. I have that. So now I can use some features provided by the L3 extension. So first, let's focus on that part. Here's just the way to select the movie number 6. So part of the commentable expression, nothing else. I select the movie. And I just use that in this select here. I just use that one to pick the saga order, 1 to 6. OK, we got the ID. On the right, we have 1 to 6. And we now use this very specific and unreadable attribute, operator, which means the thing on the left is an ancestor of the thing on the right. And I do the select on the whole thing, so I will stream every movies and just watch if the saga order of this one is an ancestor of 1 to 6. So for the first one, yes, 1 is an ancestor of 1 to 6. 1, 2 is an ancestor of 1 to 6. 1, 2, 3 is not an ancestor of 1 to 6. 1, 5, and the last one, 1, 2, 6 is an ancestor of 1 to 6. We have the whole list of things we wanted at the beginning, the series between the first one and the 6 we want to watch. Good. After almost 1 year in production, I discovered it was not mandatory to use L3 to do that. In L3, there is many operators. You can do things like search every children at 2 different levels with regex in the middle, dot star thing. So it's amazing. But just for the use case I started with, it was a bit too much. And in fact, everything is available in the SQL standard thing. So in PG, we can represent it like this. Instead of the L3, I just used the previous thing, previous integer here, and it's a foreign key, but not that foreign because it's foreign to the table itself. So we'll just represent the parent of the current movie I'm on. So for 1, it's null, there is nothing before, but for 2, it's 1, for 4, for example, it's 3, for 6, it's 2. So we have the ID. It's not an L3 anymore. It's just the parent of the current one. Be prepared. The next slide is the most complicated one in this presentation. So attach your seat belt and be prepared. I have this thing. So it's a recursive commentable expression. So first, we'll focus on the part on the top. It's, again, the way to select the movie number 6. Good. And every time there is something in this commentable expression, it will be streamed out in that table. So here we see the movie number 6 at the end. but it will be included into the second part of the query after the union all. So let's do that together. 6 is printed out. Here it's inserted here. Here I get 6, and then I get the parent of 6, which is 2. 2 is printed out. Cool, I have 2. But 2 does the round again, it's recursive, and I want now the parent of 2, sorry, it's 1. I got 1, I print it out here, and 1 does the thing too, and 1 has no parents, so it stopped the recursion. It's complicated, I know. Every time I work with it, it's my mindset. I'm totally, I have nose bleeding and headaches at the end of the day. But it's the way to do something recursive in the SQL world. We are a declarative language, so things recursive are a bit more complex. But still possible and totally fine in SQL in general. So MySQL and Oracle and any other language should be compatible with that. Another neat feature for me, it's the foreign data wrapper. For now, we worked mainly with things inside the database. But if I want to load things which are not inside the database, it's something PG solved using foreign, it's here the important word, data wrapper. It's a way to connect to something outside PG. The 101 for that is a foreign data wrapper attached to a file. So it's built in, you have access to it on your distribution. The foreign data wrapper, you just enable it as any extension, and you do some kind of ceremony to create the server here, which is not a server, just a denomination. And then you create a table. It's a foreign table, you define columns on it, and at the end, you declare what this table will be on. Okay, we see it's a text file, etc password with delimiters and null value just by being empty. Cool. You see, there is just that. At the end, I can do SQL on top of this file without any insert, without any parsing, without anything. It's just that. The foreign data wrapper is in charge to transform the query you did into something at the file level. And you don't care. It's the magic thing of SQL. You don't care how it's done. You just say, I want it. And the system is in charge of doing it for you. And here I can get all the users with bash as a shell by default. But that is one file. You can technically do that with a script. It's also possible. So here I just did inside the script a big find to find every file in my file system, and then I can just check every file, read, write, executable for other group in my container. We see we have a lot of them. And again, it's totally possible. The first one thinking about putting curl in that kind of shell script, it's a bad idea. Don't do that. It's not meant for this, first. And in fact, it's a security issue. And it will be slow over time. So here, it's just the 101 as an example. But if I mention curl, it's because usually you want to manage and use data outside your application, real foreign data. It's not limited to the file system you have access to. First, again, as an example, what is best than PG to connect to another PG? And I'm not mentioning something like a cluster mode. It's really a client-server thing. I have my Sakila database, and I just want to spawn a new PG and connect it to this Sakila database. So you see, here you see a lot of verbose stuff to just say, okay, I connect with this other one, I do some kind of impersonation with password and everything, but at the end, I can do something like this, where I create a foreign table and just say, okay, this one is connected to another schema in this specific remote database, and that's it. I can do the select star from my remote film table, and I have everything. So you are here connected to another system, and you get some data just by doing a select. First, you can do select, but you can do insert, delete, update, whatever you want. As soon as you respect the remote table, it's perfect. You have no issue about that. Second thing, you can do that and join on the table you have locally. So you can merge multiple models, your database, your remote database and your local database together to do the stuff at the PG level. It will be a bit slower because indexes and things for optimization are not shared between instances, but still, it's possible. I've seen so many people doing migration using that. It's totally perfect. And the last thing, you don't have to do that with PG. You can do that with SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL. You're not limited to SQL itself. Neo4j, MongoDB. You have SQL for MongoDB, so cool. And you can do that even with an API. Stripe, the provider for payment, they provide a foreign data wrapper to their API. So you can connect something from at your DB level, at the table level, to something outside of your PG just to do joins. So in fact, you don't have to rely on some glue code at your application level to do, okay, I got the thing from my system, and then I merge that in memory with the Stripe call I did. Here, it can be done at the application, at the DB level, and a data engineer can introspect and craft their own query directly without asking anything to a developer. So it's, for me, way better on that part. And to conclude this presentation, I would like to share with you, quite shortly, things I've done in production and not proud of, and things I discovered and I'm really happy to share with you. And let's start with first things I'm a bit ashamed. First, I deployed system using notin in queries. First, if you use notin, please don't do this. Notin is a code smell. It's literally a thing used a lot by developer, and I assume that, when you want to search for something and you search by doing some set join here with a notin to find if something is not in the other. If you have that, it means for me, your model has an issue. In fact, we try to solve every problems with a query. In fact, the problem has to be solved with a query and the right model. And when you have to use notin, it's maybe because the model is not correct. It represents something wrong based on the problem you want to solve. And the notin has the main issue with it. It's working perfectly fine locally with a small amount of data, but as soon as it grows, it won't work. It will be so slow and impossible to optimize. You can't optimize something not existing in your system. You're looking something not in the other one. So even an index won't help because your database is growing too much. So really, notin is a code smell. You should not use it at all. Another thing, inheritance. We all know for years now, in Java, Kotlin, or every languages, we should not inherit in our system. It's not a code smell, but something we would like to avoid. Composition is way better than inheritance. Inheritance on table has been introduced in late 90s, 99 if I remember correctly. And yeah, maybe it was because Java was hype at that time and they thought it was a good idea, but no, it's not. It's deprecated, and it's not even compatible with new neat feature introduced in the SQL standards, so it's here just for legacy reasons and no one should use it anymore. And the last one for that part, timestamps. If you want to represent something like a date, dates are really complicated. I really recommend to use timestamp with time zone. It's not perfect. There is things and caveats with it, but still it's better than timestamp, which are related to the server where you run your query. So I had to work in a project where they decided, oh, let's use timestamp everywhere, and we'll do the UTC alignment everywhere in the code. Bad idea. You should not do that. There is a type for it. Just use it and store the time zone. You won't solve just by doing UTC all the time. So here, don't use timestamps. And thing you should use from my point of view, because for me, PG now starts to be a platform more than just a DB engine. If you want, you can do full text search into it. So instead of relying on some other piece of software, I really like Elasticsearch, but as soon as you have two systems together, you have to manage transaction across them. It's complicated. In PG, you have full text search, so why should you use something else? You can just enable the function and you have the full text search included. It's maybe not as complete as Elastic or another system, but maybe enough for your use case. So really something good. If you want to do some geographical, GeoJSON stuff, everything related to map just to see if a point is in an area. PostGIS, it's not the best extension in PG for that. It's just the best extension ever made in the software industry for this specific case. I've seen people trying to do that with Mongo, with Elastic, where just one PG running PostGIS was 100 times better at solving issues without big indexes and things like that. So really, people are installing PG just for that. So if you have to use it, yeah, feel free to. And the last one, and I'm a troll here, I acknowledge that. In that slide, I've implemented something I can call MongoDB in PG. In fact, in PG, you have access to JSON-B or JSON, whatever you want. And here, it's the way to use unstructured data inside PG. You can have unstructured elements. You can set indexes on it. You can query with specific operators directly into that fields. And it's that without losing all the concept of the SQL ecosystem, ACID concepts, SQL joins, and you have best of both worlds, in fact, SQL and NoSQL all together. There is even people in an open source project called FuretDB, if I remember correctly, using PG as a backend, and they just translate the MongoDB client to SQL calls directly made to PG. So if you want to avoid MongoDB or something like Mongo, but you still want to use the Mongo API, you can with that. So clearly, for me, a very good thing. And if your application is just a CRUD of tables or view, and you just store things, instead of implementing an application, Spring Boot, Micronaut, Quarkus, or whatever framework you want, just delegate that to the to something else. I love PostgreSQL. GraphGen is a bit different for that, but it's a way to expose your system with REST or GraphQL automatically. So the thing will connect to your database, discover tables, and offer a REST API on top of it. You don't have to maintain it. It's just a Docker image, nothing to do. And again, with that, you can focus on something more important, like your business model. And to conclude, PG runs everywhere. You can run that in the smallest Raspberry Pi to the biggest VM in the cloud. No license, no problem to deploy it. You can run it now in Kubernetes with really good operators like Cloud Native PG. It's the one for me which has understood the best Kubernetes on one end and DBA work, so how to manage a database with backup, rolling update, and things like this directly for you as an operator. Or you can use Yugabyte, which is another flavor of PG, where they just split the runtime, the query runtime, and the storage, so you can distribute PG in multiple regions in Kubernetes directly. But the best PG ever made is the one you don't manage. So with Google Cloud, for example, with Cloud SQL, Ivan, Crunchy, Clever Cloud, you just ask them to run it, and you don't have to manage it yourself because it's the core of your business. Usually, your data, you don't want to lose them, so you want to have someone taking care of it. For me, I used AlloyDB, which is almost like Yugabyte, what I described, so something distributed but managed in the cloud by Google. And with that, they introduced all the AI stuff, Gemini, and things like this directly into it. You can do PG vector and re-implement embeddings and things like that directly with AlloyDB. And again, it's managed. You don't have to use that. So as a conclusion, PG, you can do a lot of stuff with it. It's impressive. The documentation is really good. There is a lot of information, a lot of example, and you can, instead of reinventing the wheel at your code level, you should just delegate that thing to PG because it's, like I said, a platform more than an engine anymore, so you can just focus on the main part of your business instead of trying to reinvent some very low-level stuff. PG is the best for you, and you will win by using it more. Thank you. I hope you like this presentation, and if you have any question, I'm available here now or during the conference. Thank you.